Hey, strangers. Welcome.
Sidesters.
Oh, Sidesters. Wow. I wasn't thinking.
Jeez.
Hey, Sidesters. Welcome to another episode of The Side Sessions. I am here with my side chick, Krista.
Your sidekick chick?
My sidekick chick. What's up, Krista? Talk at me.
Oh, at you or with you?
Or whatever.
Hi.
Hi.
Whenever you put me on the spot, I have nothing to say. It's weird.
Yeah, now we're quiet.
We have been talking for like a good 2 hours. So.
We have. Talk about the weather.
I'm surprised we have anything left after doing the regular episode.
It amazes me that we sometimes have to do a book club podcast after
I know.
these two.
Thank God that's only not even every month these days.
No. So how's life? How's life treating you?
I had a rough week, but I got through it. Tomorrow will be a nice free day with nothing going on. I'm going up north today.
Monday, I'm back to 2 days of orientation for new sixth graders. So I have to go in for that. And it's supposed to be hot and humid and stormy. So that's going to suck.
Your new air conditioner is working fine?
New air conditioner is working perfect.
Awesome.
Yeah, I got nothing. It was just a week.
Cool.
Nothing really exciting. The storm. Not so many trees down. Our cemetery, Evergreen Cemetery, is just torn up.
Oh,
like there's
really?
trees down everywhere. Yeah.
Were there any headstones damaged?
I don't think so.
Good.
But it was just such a bad storm. That's like the worst storm that I've personally ever been in. So you didn't get hit down here too bad.
No, we just got
Did you find out why the
for a
power
little
flickered?
bit. No. Just earlier when we were recording?
Demons, yeah.
Why do you always go to demons?
I don't know.
It's way more dramatic than just a power thing.
Yeah, they're just a ghost. It's a demon. Should we jump right into this bad boy?
Dive in. Yeah.
So I was going to do a different topic for this episode, which was going to be broadcast intrusions. And I was scrolling through Reddit on my couch, I believe, one early evening, which is for me at like 4 o'clock. And I found this story about a disappearance. And it was the picture that I just sent you that really kind of got to me. It's just like a really sweet picture.
Yeah, they both have their eyes closed.
Yeah, and she has her arms around him. He has his arms around her. It's just a really cute picture. So I read it, and I'm like, wow. I'm like, I really kind of want to talk. It was like the Trini Gibson thing. Like, I feel this weird connection to the Trini Gibson disappearance. And I don't know if it's because it's a young girl, like around the age my kids at school and stuff like that. So that one just really got to me. And this is kind of the same thing. So I'm like, I'm going to do this as a topic. So I researched it, got done with it, and the day after I got done with it is when Rolling Stone magazine came out with a huge article about it.
Keeping tabs on you.
Yeah, they're watching me. So I was super annoyed because that's happened before where I research something and then all of a sudden somebody else comes out with it.
Yeah.
But it's just, we could have done it on the strange sessions, but there's like really no weird tie in, like missing 411. It's just the only mystery is what happened to them. So today we are looking at my voice is shot today. Today we are looking at the disappearance of Bonnie Bickwit and Mitch Weiser.
Okay.
Was that Lucy?
That was Lucy.
Howling?
Just whining.
Oh, poor girl. Okay.
Baby.
So this comes mainly from an article or a post on Reddit by the user Reading Rambos. Such names on Reddit.
Reading Rambos.
Reading Rambos called, quote, "What happened to Bonnie and Mitch, a teenage couple who went missing 50 years ago when hitchhiking to a rock concert." An article on the crimeandthecity.net website, I believe that's a podcast from September 4th, 2020, called, quote, "The Mysterious Unsolved Disappearance of Mitch Weiser and Bonnie Bickwit," and of course the article in Rolling Stone that just came out called, quote, "Two teens hitchhike to a concert. 50 years later, they haven't come home."
At least they provided you some extra research
They
material.
did. They did. Well, I was kind of wondering if there weren't like more developments, like they found them or something.
Yeah.
So here we go.
Okay.
And actually, according to Rolling Stone, last week marked the 50-year anniversary of the disappearance of 16-year-old Mitchell Weiser and 15-year-old Bonnie Bickwit, two gifted students who are the oldest missing teen cases in the country.
I'm guessing they are covering it too because they were on their way to a concert.
Yeah,
Rolling Stones.
that very easily could be.
Or
but it
Rolling
was
Stones.
also the anniversary of the disappearance,
Yeah.
but I didn't know that. So here we go. It was June of 1973 when 15-year-old Bonnie Bickwit was dropped off at Camp Wellmet in Narrowsburg, New York for the summer. I like Camp Wellmet.
Mm-hmm. Well met.
We are well met. Mm-hmm. For this, it was a summer camp ran by the Jewish Federation. It was her first year working there, having spent the previous summers as a camper there herself. She would be employed as what was called a, quote, mother's helper. This job would require her to watch a few of the younger children while their mothers worked at the camp. June turned into July, and Bonnie's parents, Ted and Ray, R-A-Y-E, decided to drive the 3 hours from their Borough Park home to visit their daughter. The parents brought Bonnie's 26-year-old sister Cheryl and Mitchell Weiser, Bonnie's boyfriend of over a year. Mitch was a 16-year-old photography buff from Flatbush, Brooklyn, who was usually at camp during the summer himself. However, he decided to stay home that year, where he spent his final summer before graduation interning at a photography studio at Coney Island. During this visit, Bonnie would come across as perfectly normal to her family. That is how she came across in letters to her best friend Michelle Festa, who was in Europe over the summer. Cheryl would later say Bonnie's behavior seemed a little strange. She seemed to have a lot on her mind, but Cheryl thought little of it at the time. It would turn out that Bonnie was not enjoying her summer job. She was spending it concerned about her father's health. He had a degenerative neurological disorder, and she would cry at night to her friends while talking about it. There was also the fact that Bonnie felt exploited by her job. Her boss, Charles Shane, had Bonnie work up to 16 hours every day. That's crazy.
Wow.
Right?
For a kid?
Yeah.
Wow.
For a 15-year-old to work 16 hours. 15-year-old Bonnie wrote in a letter to Mitch's best friend, Stuart Carton. The three knew each other due to attending John Dewey High School, a school for gifted children in Brooklyn, that she was, quote, lonely and bored, considering quitting her job. She asked if there were any jobs at the camp that Stuart was working at, and if there were, to let her know. This letter was dated the day before she went on her trip with Mitch to a rock concert on July 28th. Bonnie snuck away from Camp Wilmette. She returned home to Borough Park, Brooklyn, to retrieve the $80 she had saved to purchase a bicycle. Her parents were on vacation in Cape Cod, Massachusetts, so she let herself in and out through a window. Bonnie returned to the camp, not bothering to contact Cheryl while she was in the city. So she left camp, went home, broke in basically to get her $80, and went back to camp. On July 25th, Mitch and his friend Larry Marion spent $10 each on tickets to Summer Jam. Summer Jam was a concert billed as the successor to Woodstock, and it would occur on July 28th in Watkins Glen, New York. The band, the Grateful Dead, and the Allman Brothers were all going to perform. Summer Jam would become the largest concert in history, with around 600,000 to 800,000 people in attendance, more people than Woodstock.
Wow.
It's become known as, quote, the Forgotten Festival.
Yeah, I've never heard of it.
You never hear much about that.
Huh.
And it had like a super huge crowd, but you just don't hear much about that concert.
Mm-mm.
When Larry's mother learned about the concert, she forbade him from attending at the last minute. Though usually permissive with her son, she had a funny feeling regarding Summer Jam. Not wanting the ticket to go to waste, Mitch asked Larry if he could take it for Bonnie. The couple, who had spent their afternoons together during the school year, had secretly exchanged wedding rings that summer and were missing each other. I think that's cute.
Mm.
Larry had said that he could take the ticket, so the other teen thanked him and left and told his friend he'd see him on Monday. Mitch had a driving lesson planned for that day and had no plans to miss it. It was 2 days later when Mitch left his home. Mitch's mother, Shirley, did not want him to attend the concert, but Mitch was determined to go. His mother eventually conceded. Before leaving, she attempted to give him more money, knowing that he only had $25 on him. Mitch had yet to cash his last paycheck, and she wanted to ensure that he had enough money. Mitch, independent as always, ignored his mother and left the house. Before Mitch arrived, Bonnie went to her boss, Charles, and asked for the next 2 days off. It appeared that Mitch had contacted her about going to the concert, but it's unknown when he did so. Her boss refused her request, so overworked and tired, she quit right on the spot. Good for her.
Mm-hmm.
The 15-year-old told a friend that she would return for her stuff and final check on Monday. Depending on the source, she was either paid then and there or she would pick up her last check after the concert. She then got to work on a hitchhiking sign which read, quote, Watkins Glen, which was 75 miles from Narrowsburg. Mitch took the bus to Narrowsburg, then took a cab the rest of the way to Camp Wilmette, arriving around midnight. Mitch then called his house as usual when staying overnight somewhere. Mitch's sister Susan took the call, and Mitch told his sister that the trip used all of his money, but that he would be okay. Concerned, she begged her brother to just come back home. However, Mitch was stubborn and told her that he would be fine. He said he would see her when he came back home on Monday. Mitch and Bonnie spent the night at Camp Wilmette, which is weird considering she quit.
Right.
That he showed
up,
but they spent the night there. The following day, they ate breakfast and left the camp with plans to hitchhike. And hitchhiking back in the 70s wasn't a
normal
thing. It was kind of normal.
Probably still a little risky, but more common.
Yeah. They wanted to make it by noon when the concert gates opened, allowing those in attendance to reserve a spot by camping overnight. Since she was no longer employed, Stainer made no effort to stop her from leaving. Stainer was her boss. Stainer was
Charlie.
Yeah,
whoever Charles
or whatever his name was her
Jerk.
boss. And he basically just was like, whatever, take off if you want. And there's a lot of people that are upset that he did that without like having her contact her family
Parents,
or something, but he just let them go. Cheryl would later say that it greatly upset her that he just let Bonnie leave without any effort to contact her family. So with backpacks and sleeping bags and their Watkins Glen hitchhiking sign, they set out for their adventure. The young couple then stood outside the campsite and attempted to get a ride from one of the trucks that came in and out of the site all day. They chased after these trucks and waved until someone stopped to give them a ride. The teens were given a lift into Narrowsburg. The two thanked the driver and then went to stand on the side of Highway 97 in an attempt to hitch another ride to the concert, which was now about 75 miles away. They were last seen in the truck driver's rearview mirror holding up the cardboard sign Bonnie had made the night before. There are unconfirmed reports that they got a ride from a truck driver, but that has never been verified. That night, a young woman named Ellen Sperling received a call. Sperling didn't know who called, but whoever called said that Bonnie and Mitch would stay with Sperling in her dorm room that night. Sperling was spending the summer attending a program run by Cornell University, which made her dorm room just a short distance away from Watkins Glen. Sperling stayed up and waited through the night for the pair to show up, but they never arrived at her dorm. That's weird. That like, who would have called and said that Bonnie and Mitch were going to be staying there?
They have mutual friends of some kind?
And then they never showed up. I don't know. By Sunday night, Mitch should have been at his home. He never showed up. His parents started to worry because Mitch, quote, would call us up if he was just even going to be a half hour late. By Monday morning, there was still no sign of Mitch. Shirley called Camp Wilmette. She figured that he was spending more time with Bonnie before coming home, but this was not the case. Someone told Shirley that Bonnie, and therefore Mitch, never returned. Susan, with her and Mitch's father, Sidney, went to Brooklyn Precinct to report Mitch missing. There, they were treated with, quote, great disrespect. Law enforcement said that Mitch was probably just another runaway, and besides, the camp was in Sullivan County and therefore did not fall under the jurisdiction of New York police. It's not known if they've even made it to the concert, as it was the 70s and there was no way of logging like who was entering the festival grounds. About 400,000 people were able to enter through the concert gates without being checked for tickets. With over 500,000 people in attendance, it was impossible to know if they were ever there. And this comes out later, but they asked everybody to go back through their photos from the concert to see if they could see Mitch and Bonnie in the background of any pictures, and I don't think anything ever came of that.
Yeah.
Ray and Ted Bickwit were still on vacation in Cape Cod. They had no idea that their daughter planned to go to Summer Jam. The Bickwits were notified on Tuesday when they arrived home. Someone called their house and Ted answered. The person was looking for Bonnie. When they learned that Bonnie was not at the house, they told her parents that Bonnie had went to the concert, did not return, and had left all of her stuff at the campground. The Bickwits immediately got into their car and drove to Camp Wilmette to look for their daughter and to report her missing to the police. Ray later said that, quote, the police's attitude was, they just went away for the summer. They'll come back. Like, the police didn't really do...
Teenagers go missing and nobody cares.
Yeah, like the police didn't help matters a whole lot in this case. Officers also said they couldn't do much since Bonnie was 15 and left of her own accord.
15?
Yeah.
You're not an adult.
To the police, Bonnie and Mitch were just a couple of young lovers who ran off for the summer. They had hit the road and would return before school began in the fall. Shortly after returning from vacation, the Bickwits got a letter from Bonnie dated 3 days before the concert. In it, she reassured her parents that she loved them very much. But at camp, she had independence, which she seemed to enjoy despite how she felt about the job overall. Bonnie told her parents she wanted the same freedom at home. Notably, when she wasn't working, she wanted to just get up and go wherever she wanted without telling anyone. And she told them, quote, I really want you to allow me and to not mind my traveling and going out and doing things. With that, the Bickwits thought their child would just be gone for the summer, but would surely come back before the school year. So Bonnie's starting.
Then or not, they're starting to think she just wanted
so Bonnie
some freedom.
just wanted. Bonnie was like, they were smart kids. They were like very mature for their age kids, and she is just starting to assert her independence. And she's like, I just want you guys checking on me everywhere. I want to be able to do what I want. Mm-hmm. So they probably thought that she was just off gallivanting around with her boyfriend Mitch. Mm-hmm. By Friday, August 3rd, a week had passed with no signs of the two. Sydney and Susan drove to Watkins Glen to look for the two teens. Shirley stayed home by the phone in case her son called. Sydney and Susan were unable to come up with anything regarding Mitch. The police there told the pair they had no jurisdiction over the case since it's unknown if Mitch and Bonnie even made it there to the festival. It would fall to the Sullivan County Sheriff's Department to investigate. Besides, it was the era of freedom after a decades-long war. It was common back then for teenagers to get up and leave home or for young people to join communes and cults. Bonnie even observed in a paper for school that previous spring entitled, quote, Is Traditional Marriage Dying?, in which she wrote, quote, People are looking for alternatives to traditional ways, other ways to be happy. And the teenagers weren't typical for their era. Ray told the New York Times that she and Bonnie, quote, didn't communicate very well. She said that she knew her viewpoints differed from her daughter's and she didn't want to argue with her. Ray also never knew the depths of Bonnie's feelings. Shirley also had few discussions with her son, except for nagging him to brush his teeth or cut his hair. Mm-hmm. Therefore, despite both coming from strong, loving families who they were close to, things were strained at the moment. However, this is all typical of being a teenager. But their families could not fathom that their children would just run off. After all, this was all very typical teenage behavior, wasn't it? But the teens spending the rest of their summer on an adventure was a plausible explanation to the families. Mitch had stayed home from camp that summer, and to Shirley, he appeared to miss the country. His parents also felt that he could be resentful towards them. His family had recently told Mitch that they could not afford to send him to his dream college in Rochester. Instead, he would have to attend Brooklyn College about 10 minutes away from home. The Weiser family felt that he had come to terms with this, but they were less sure after he disappeared. The four parents waited anxiously for the start of the school year, but there was no sign of the teens when classes resumed in September. This was strange to those in their immediate circles. After all, the two were popular and were, quote, extremely articulate, extremely intelligent, socially involved youngsters who cared for many causes. The pair did advanced coursework, were active in an ecology class, and were already planning their careers. Mitch was going to graduate early that coming January. Bonnie was a volunteer at a local kindergarten who was relatively close to her family. Nobody could fathom that they would jeopardize their futures by staying away for good. After all, they were both intelligent, responsible young adults. Ray stated that Bonnie would never just go missing because she knew what it would do to her father. The parents could no longer contain the worry and fear they had put on the back burner for the past 2 months. 6 weeks had passed, and the police still treated them as just a couple of, quote, runaway hippies. So that's horrible. They dismissed any claims of foul play or how out of character this was for the teens. The families would later say that the police completely botched the case, which it seems like they did. Sullivan County was the principal investigator, while New York County police were assisting because the teens were Brooklyn residents. The investigation was a complete sham, and neither department took anything seriously. Only Bonnie's best friend, Michelle Festa, would be interviewed. Ray tried to get the FBI involved, but they had no jurisdiction since the crime did not cross state lines. They wrote to their congressman as well, asking for help. With the officials failing to take them seriously, it became clear that the parents themselves would need to launch an investigation. Within the coming months, the parents circulated letters and posters to more than 500 American Indian missions, 300 youth hostels, hundreds of radio stations, and various runaway centers such as the East Villages Contact, operated by the Educational Alliance. They personally combed the East Village. They asked the Social Security Administration whether either child had earned any wages since summer, and it came back that they had not earned any wages, and the parents' efforts resulted in complete dead ends. They looked as far away as San Francisco and Oregon, where runaways of the day usually congregated. The families placed hundreds of ads in underground newspapers pleading with the kids to come home. They did everything possible to keep their children's stories in the public eye. Desperate and frustrated, the Bickwits and the Weisers started to contact psychics. One by the name of Bennett Bayrick said that the children were someplace cold, like New Hampshire or Vermont. Why did I pronounce that so weirdly? This reminded Ted of an announcement he heard on a loudspeaker while searching Camp Wilmette. The announcer said that anyone who needed food and a place to stay should go to the Earth's People Park in Vermont. The families then made inquiries there, but this too proved futile. By autumn, one of the few leads came in as a letter. It was from a South Dakota reservation and asked for a donation. The parents thought it could be from the teens because they were interested in Indian affairs. The families mailed over 500 flyers to reservations and mission schools until they concluded that the teens weren't at any of them. However, Ray was curious as to how this organization got the Bickwits' address. The flyers the family sent out did not contain the family's address. So they're wondering if the kids didn't go to this Indian reservation and that's how they got the address. Mm-hmm. Other witnesses insisted that they saw the teens on a bus to Dover, New Hampshire. The witnesses only took notice because of how young the couple looked, though this was either not reported or not taken seriously by the police. Another witness insisted that they saw Bonnie in a pharmacy, but nothing could be definitively proven. When not looking for the teens, the parents searched for reasons their children might have run away and never written or called home, because the behavior was very out of character for the two. Mitch, as mentioned, would make sure to contact his household if he was going to be gone longer than expected. And according to Ted, quote, "My daughter has never been away from home like this for even a few days." Both Mitch and Bonnie came from strong, loving families. Both were really good kids and really responsible. This was unlike them, and friends and family repeatedly tried to point this out to the police, but the police never listened. It was January 1974, and Mitch's graduation day came and went. When February slowly peeked around the corner, the student organization at John Dewey High School voted to set up a committee which would be named Have a Heart. It would be a Valentine's Day fundraiser. The small shop would sell shirts, cakes, and donuts. The goal was to raise $1,000 to hire a private investigator. A student had seen an advertisement on TV about a company named Tracers. The company claimed a 60% success rate in tracking down missing persons. I thought that seemed like super low, but I guess
60%.
60%.
When you think of the number of people that go missing and are never found,
it's better than a half a chance, you know. But it just sucks that the family has to, that like the students are running a fundraiser to get somebody to like take this seriously and actually go look for the kids. Crazy. The parents welcomed the private investigator as they were running out of money to fund their own investigation. Ted did not work due to his condition, while Ray worked in a Manhattan retail store. Shirley was looking for a job, and Sydney ground lens for prescription glasses. The families were just barely middle class. The Bickwits and the Weisers had saved some money for their children's college education, but now they were spending that money looking for their children. Ray told papers, quote, "The cost keeps going up. How can I put a price on my daughter?" The Have a Heart thing ran longer than it intended to. When it finally ended in March, the shop had only raised $675. Edward Goldfaber, the company's founder, said that they would check runaway havens throughout the country. He also told the parents that they could count on hearing from the teens by Bonnie's 18th birthday. If he failed to find anything, he would be very surprised, and it would end up that tracers were unable to find anything on the teenagers.
It was so much easier to just disappear back then.
It was.
There
It was
no
like
digital
really easy,
trace of
but
anything.
It doesn't help that the police are like blowing this all off.
If they had taken it seriously, they could have found them.
Yep. It was challenging for them to be empty nesters way sooner than they had imagined. Bonnie had another year at school. Mitch was going to college within walking distance of his house. No longer did Bonnie's radio play all night throughout the house as it did during the school year. Mitch and his parents no longer talked about his plans after graduation. No more friends coming in and out of either house. The halls in the homes were silent. They missed their children and wished nothing more than for them to walk through the door. The years dragged by slowly, but the four never stopped hoping and praying that their children would come home. Their investigation had slowed over the next 2 years. During this, they waited for Bonnie's 18th birthday with bated breath. The families hoped that finally, now that she and Mitch were both legal adults, they would return. January 28th, 1976 came. The two did not show up. Again, there was no sign of Bonnie and Mitch. In 1984, Sydney and Shirley moved from Brooklyn to Tucson, Arizona to improve Sydney's health. However, they kept their names and numbers in the Brooklyn White Pages despite it costing them to do so because they were worried that if the kids did come home. So the Brooklyn White Pages had their Arizona number under their name just in case the kids came back and wanted to call.
Yeah.
One day in 1986, the Weiser household received a long-distance call. The operator said that it was from a woman named Bonnie and asked if he would accept the call. Sydney enthusiastically said that he would. As soon as the call was put through, he exclaimed, "Oh my God, Bonnie, Bonnie, where are you?" There was no reply as the call was accidentally disconnected. Whoever it was would never try to call. I know.
That's crazy.
From what I read, it was like a switching error when they switched it over to...
That could have been their opportunity. Yeah. It could have been a hoax, too.
Yeah, that's the thing. There was no reply. The call was accidentally disconnected. Whoever it was never tried to call the Weiser household back nor contact Bonnie's own family. But it was weird that it was Bonnie, but she was trying to contact Mitch's parents. Mm-hmm. This may have just been a prank call. Mm-hmm. There should be like a special place in hell for people that do like prank calls to families of people who are missing. In 1994, Detective Anthony Suarez of the Monticello City Sheriff's Department was handed the case. This was due to pressure from the families and a local journalist named Eric Greenberg. In his article called Memories of the Missing, Greenberg was told that Suarez planned to hand out flyers at the Woodstock concert's 25th anniversary in August. Suarez theorized that there was a good chance Summer Jam was billed as a successor to Woodstock and that this concert was a successor to Woodstock too, so maybe somebody would know something, and that there would be like an overlap of people that attended both. In addition, Suarez told Greenberg that the families that he planned to redo the whole investigation and interview parents, witnesses, and friends. For the first time in years, things seemed hopeful.
Someone's actually investigating it.
Yeah. In 1994? Like, it was like the early 70s when they disappeared. The years went on as they had before. The hope that had filled the families faded again year by year. By the early 1990s, Cheryl Kagan was thinking of her sister far more than usual. She sought the advice of a rabbi who suggested that Cheryl honor Yom Kippur, the most important of the Jewish holidays, where people ask for God's forgiveness and atoning for their sins. During the evening and morning service, Yiskor takes place, which is a series of prayers to honor the dead, and Bonnie's name was placed in the bulletin for the first time at Stephen Wise Free Synagogue. During an interview, Cheryl told Greenberg she hoped putting it in writing would help bring closure, but it ultimately didn't. The Weisers, unable to cope with the thought that they could be dead, said, quote, "Not knowing is horrid, but if I found out that he was dead, I think I would just die." So that sucks. Like knowing, like not knowing sucks, but also knowing that they're dead sucks. So it's horrible. The year now was 1998. Greenberg was once again writing about the case in an article entitled Without a Trace. In an interview, Suarez would admit that the Sullivan County Sheriff's Department lost all of the original case files. So now whatever they had were lost.
Good Lord.
They
never stood a chance.
No, as did the NYPD, who assisted because the teens were Brooklyn residents. They said that they too had misplaced all their files.
Oh my God.
This reveal was crucial as the file contained the only known copies of the duo's dental records. So it's like this is like a perfect storm of just complete botching and mishandling of a case.
Mm-hmm.
The files being misplaced also meant that witness lists and any notes on the case were gone. Not that there was much to it, as it was found out the police failed to interview anybody from the camp or talk to any friends. Michelle, Bonnie's best friend, was the only one that police ever spoke to. So it's just like so, I don't know. It's like, how can they be so
casual
horrible?
And yeah, I don't know.
After Greenberg published his Without a Trace article, a psychic named Maurice Schicker contacted the Jewish Week reporter. Schicker stated to Greenberg that somebody had killed Mitch. He first met with Greenberg, and after speaking with Greenberg, Susan had him over to her house. Susan would go on to say that she was creeped out by Schicker, and that when speaking with him, something occurred to her. Schicker was almost describing the murder like he did it himself.
Ooh.
Susan wondered if she was talking to her brother's killer. That's so creepy.
That's really creepy.
I don't know if it's Schicker or Schlicker because it showed up as both ways. Schlicker told her that he tried to work with Suarez regarding the case to no avail. Suarez's not wanting to work with Schicker or Schlicker did not stop him from trying to wedge his way into the case. In summer of 1990...
As killers will often do.
Yeah, you get off on knowing that you're in the case now and you're the person that killed him.
Mm-hmm.
In the summer of 1999, a segment regarding the case aired on Channel 9, 10 o'clock news in New York, with Schlicker being featured in the segment giving a tour of the camp that they disappeared from. 1999 was also the same year the class of 1974, the year Mitch was due to graduate from John Dewey High School, had their school reunion, with a high school reunion discussion trailing off into subjects of the past. Friends realized that for nearly all of them, the disappearance of Bonnie and Mitch ended up being a pivotal moment in their lives.
Well, sure.
Bonnie's best friend, Michelle, said, quote, "The world changed for all of us that summer. They had thought the world was safe, but what happened to their friends, the naivety of childhood started to fade away, and they began, and that's always like such a hard part for like a young person graduating college to realize the world can kind of suck."
Mm-hmm. I lost a classmate in my senior year. He was killed in a car accident, and that was like,
it's such it's such a hard thing where you lose that childhood innocence and realize how things can be. The people that went to school with them were angry at how the case was mismanaged and how they were just brushed away as runaway teenagers. The class would raise funds through email and planted a tree on the grounds of John Dewey in memory of the pair. Their fundraiser reached $1,000, so there is a plaque now at the school. In June of 2000, the ceremony took place. Mitch's sister Susan would say, quote, "It was an incredible gift for me." And this is a ceremony where they dedicated the tree and the plaque. During the ceremony, the group called upon state attorney Elliot Spitzer to order a new statewide probe to pursue recommendation made by TV manhunter John Walsh from America's Most Wanted. Was it America's Most Wanted?
I think so.
Michelle Festa, Bonnie's best friend, is an attorney for New York and said that as teens, she and her peers felt helpless and put all their faith in the police. She said, quote, "Now we are adults. We have the internet, faxes, and emails. Even with the passage of time, it's not too late to get some sort of closure." By the following week, friends and family got response from General Spitzer, who looked into how his office could help. The Attorney General in New York does not have jurisdiction over the local police, but they can offer assistance where they can see fit.
I got confused because his name is really familiar to the psychic / potential killer.
It is. General Pataki spoke with Susan. An aide to Governor George Pataki spoke with Susan. They told her the supervisor of New York State Missing and Exploited Children Clearinghouse, Ken Bunyak, would like to speak with her. Buniak wished to discuss Mitch and Bonnie's case. Things were starting to look positive once again. In July, Attorney General Spritzer and Governor George Pataki involved top-of-the-line investigators on the case. These were investigators William Kilgallen and investigator Roy Strever of the New York State Bureau of Criminal Investigation. They would be assigned to this case. On July 22nd through the 26th, flyers were distributed at Woodstock 99, the 29th anniversary of the concert, in hopes of generating more leads. Unfortunately, it failed to do so. That same month, MSNBC filmed an episode of Missing Persons about Bonnie and Mitch that aired on October 6th and 7th, and they aired an episode on MSNBC show Missing Persons. Susan, Ray, Cheryl, Eric Greenberg, and Detective Suarez participated in the news show, but Maurice Schickler, the psychic from earlier, was on there as well. He graphically described with peculiar accuracy the murder to the film crew, and he took them to where he felt the crime scene was and described the crime graphically. Yeah.
It's really weird.
According to Rolling Stone, the article in Rolling Stone, and this is where the first time I saw this, Schickler, who claimed he had received visions about the teen, said that they were dead and buried in a rock quarry near the Wilmette campgrounds. While walking in the woods near the camp, Schickler announced his alleged revelation, saying, quote, "I believe that the murder took place up on the hill. Mitchell was murdered by a man who was a Vietnam War veteran. He then murdered Bonnie in another location several days later, I believe." Schickler also believed that the murderer's name is Wayne, Wade, or Willis, and that he is still alive. Detective Suarez did not look into this, which upset Susan, who still found the psychic odd. In fact, Suarez only bothered to look into a little of anything. He failed to interview any of the witnesses, nor did he speak with the previous investigators. They felt that he failed to keep promises that he had made to the families back in 1994. And I don't know, the psychic thing is weird.
Mm-hmm. It is.
But it sucks what he said, where one of them, Mitch, was killed, and then Bonnie was killed a couple days later, because it's like, what was going on with Bonnie in those couple days?
You kind of read into that.
Yeah. So that sucks. After Missing Persons aired their segment, a man named Alan Smith came forward. He told Kilgallen and Strever that he saw Bonnie and Mitch drown in a river. He said that on July 29th, he was coming back from the concert. He hitched a ride in an orange VW bus with Pennsylvania plates that he did not recall the name of. Already inside were two teenagers who he claimed were Mitch and Bonnie. He even remembered the girl talking about summer camp. 23-year-old Smith and the driver got high on marijuana while the teens were offered some, but they didn't take any. During the drive, the party decided to stop at a river to cool off. This is either the Chemung or Susquehanna River. Bonnie went into the water, and then Smith heard a scream. He said he looked up to see Bonnie being swept away by a current. Mitch jumped in to save her, but the current also pulled him out from shore. Even though he was a Navy veteran, Smith did not try to dive in and save the pair. Instead, the driver and Smith returned to the bus and drove off. The driver said that he would call the police when he got to the next town. And that's a big sticking point, is that this is a Navy guy, and like, he didn't jump in the river supposedly to save the supposed.
He likely would have also drowned, though.
Yeah.
I mean.
Yeah. The two then parted ways at the turnoff into Pennsylvania. Smith would tell investigators he was going home to Rhode Island, while he had told a reporter that he went to Yonkers, New York. So there's already some discrepancy. Yeah. Investigators found Smith's story plausible at first. Strever thought he gave conflicting information and showed little guilt. He and Kilgallen decided to ask Smith to ride back into New York with them. This was to see if he could narrow down where the drownings occurred, but he could not do so on either of the rivers. Despite Smith
I think you would never forget something like that. Although if he was higher than a hippie and a hang glider, maybe.
Yes. Despite Smith being unable to pinpoint the location, Kilgallen and Strever checked every coroner's office along the Chemung and Susquehanna rivers. This was the first lead in years, and even if the officers questioned the claim's validity quite yet, unlike the police from 1973, they still investigated it. There were not any bodies that matched the teens' descriptions that either surfaced or washed ashore. A forensic expert for New York, Judy Van Vranken, would say that this is not likely. She said during the nearly 30 years since bodies or bones should have washed ashore or floated to the surface, she did not find Smith's story to be believable.
Why do people do that?
I don't know. On December 6th, this was to let her and Ray know what Smith had told them. After so many years, they wanted to give the family some kind of closure. Despite this, they felt skeptical of the story. They told the family that Smith could not identify the teens from photos. So it sounds like he's, if he can't even identify what they look like.
Right.
And how he said he did not know the names of Mitch and Bonnie, that he only knew them once he saw the report on TV. But they said that if the pair was in that bus, their backpacks would still be there, that their backpacks would have stayed with the VW bus because they didn't have them on when they jumped into the river. So it's like, where are these backpacks?
I'm sure that guy just got rid of them.
Yeah,
if that
they
were
said
true.
There should be some clue their identities amongst that. Nor, as already stated, he couldn't pinpoint an area where the drownings would have occurred. The investigators also asked Smith to take a polygraph, which he refused to do. While we know in 2023 that polygraphs are kind of junk science, what matters is someone believes their validity and therefore would trip themselves up by being nervous during the test. The investigators did say that they did wish to make him take it, but they didn't want to press it further and make him lawyer up. There are a few more questions and they wanted answers. This would never come to fruition. Strever and Kilgarren would be pulled from the case for unknown reasons. This upset the family, who thought that they could still find something in Smith's story. As a favor, Susan asked if Strever would give Schlicker a call. Susan still could not shake the feeling that he was somehow connected to the murder. Schlicker now refused to talk to Strever and told him that he was leaving town. Susan found this very odd. The psychic had been trying for years to work with the police, but now when given the chance, he refused to take it, which is weird. Then in August of 2001, Detective Suarez retired. The case was handed over to Detective Don Starner. Starner resided in Watkins Glen in the 70s. He was of the same generation as the teens. Susan would speak to him and say that she was, quote, impressed with him. There were a few more leads in the coming years. The following April, inmates at a Maryland prison said that they heard a fellow inmate confess to the murder. He was serving time already for killing 2 people, so this didn't seem that far of a stretch. But when interviewed, the prisoner could not provide accurate details regarding the case. Police concluded that since he was already doing time, he decided to claim he killed the teens as well as some sort of weird brag. It would be 2000.
Maybe he killed 2 other people and was getting them mixed up.
Yeah. It would be 2016, well over a decade later, before the next lead came around. The investigators were told that Bonnie and Mitch were buried on a piece of land by Cacao Lake, only half an hour away from Watkins Glen. After spending days searching the area, police concluded that this was another false lead. The latest lead came in as recently as 2020. It's so weird to me that they disappeared in like 1973 or whatever,
Right.
and in 2020 stuff is still coming out. Police were told that the pair were buried underneath a set of concrete steps in Bath, New York. This too went nowhere, like every other lead the case had ever had. It has now been 50 years since Bonnie and Mitch left Camp Wilmette. The world kept turning and their families had to go on without them, wishing for one day for the pair to return. As Ray put back in 1974, quote, "What's the alternative? Just death for myself? You have to go on living and have hope." Theodore, Sidney, and Ray held on this hope until their deaths, unfortunately never knowing what happened to their children. Ted died on November 4th, 1979, at 61, his health conditions being likely made worse by the stress and anxiety of Bonnie's disappearance. Sid passed away in April of 2000 at the age of 73. After he passed, Susan found he had kept Mitch's baby teeth. She was hoping this could be used to pull DNA from, which is you know, like I have a photo album at home that has hair from Corey and I when we were kids, and it's weird to think of that could be used as a DNA trace to try to find us if something ever happened.
They could just find one of your coffee cups.
Exactly. Ray stayed in her Borough Park home where she raised her 2 daughters for many years until she finally moved out. She passed on October 1st, 2019 at 97 years old. Shirley is still alive as far as I can determine. She is now 94 and lives in the Bronx, New York, having moved back after her husband passed. As for Susan and Cheryl, they would go on to have families of their own. Cheryl and her husband Edward would have 2 children. She is now 76 years old. And Susan wed a man named Paul and had 2 children as well. She is now 77 and lives in the same area she did when Mitch went missing. And she wants to stay there in case Mitch ever wishes to track her down. She has a box of mementos that contains his 1969 Mets World Series tickets, poems he wrote, and an oversized birthday cards from friends. As usual, only some information is available to the public with this case, and therefore some gaps cannot be filled. That is okay, though. We must remember we have no right at all to any answer. We are not the family or close friends. We do not get all the information and must accept that for what it is. Michelle Festa went on to say, quote, "The saddest thing is to never know, never have any closure."
You would just spend the whole rest of your life wondering and hoping.
I can't imagine how much that sucks.
Yeah.
Bonita Bickwit stood at 4 foot 11 inches and weighed 90 pounds. She had dark brown eyes and dark brown hair parted in the middle. She wore either jeans or overalls, depending on the source, and a t-shirt. Mitch Weiser was 5'7" and 145 pounds. He too had brown eyes and long brown hair. My voice is going. I don't know why my voice is going. Might be like ketchup soda. Mitch wore gold wire-framed glasses to see. He had a scar on his lower hip. The 16-year-old wore blue jeans and a t-shirt with boots on. Both teens had their sleeping bags strapped to their backs, and according to some sources, they also had backpacks with them. Rolling Stone said in 2000, on the 25th anniversary high school reunion, friends took up a collection and planted a Norwegian red crimson maple tree. That's what I got. So theories.
Sad.
Theory number 1, they ran away. This comes from straight from the Crime in the City website. Clues that point to them running away. Number 1, Bonnie and Mitch secretly exchanged wedding promise rings during that summer. I don't see that as a clue to running away. Number 2, the week before they went to the concert, Bonnie snuck out of the camp and traveled home to retrieve the $80 she had been saving for a bicycle. Though her parents were out of town, neighbors claimed to have seen her do this.
To me, that just points to having money to go to this concert.
Yeah, she wanted the money for the concert. Number 3, both the couple's family and friends stated that the pair seemed uneasy before their disappearance. Number 4, Mitch was disappointed that his parents told him he could not attend his dream college because they couldn't afford it and that he'd have to go to college closer to home. Number 5, 3 days before they disappeared, Bonnie had mailed a letter to her parents that detailed how happy she was with the freedom she had working at the camp and encouraged her parents to give her more freedom. Number 6, the fall after they disappeared, Bonnie's mother received a letter from a Native American reservation in South Dakota asking for a donation. It may be a stretch, but Bonnie's mother noted that both Mitch and Bonnie were very interested in Native American culture, so it was thought that maybe they ran off to live on this reservation, and it was their hint that they were there and okay. I could not find any statements that verified if anyone checked with the reservation to confirm if they were there or not, but I believe the family did. Years after their disappearance, Mitch's family moved to Arizona, but paid to keep their phone number listed in the Brooklyn phone book just in case either of them wanted a call to their parents that they were still alive. 13 years after they disappeared, Mitch's father received a call on a Brooklyn number from a woman identifying herself as Bonnie, but the call was immediately disconnected. There's no way to trace the call or find out if it was actually Bonnie or if it was a mean-spirited prank. Somebody wrote, "I'm not sure how easy it was in the 70s to assume new identities, as neither Mitch or Bonnie ever used their social security numbers. I'm assuming it was easier in the 70s to forge documents and start new lives, and there were certainly plenty of job opportunities that would have paid cash and didn't require ID. Seeing as this was the 70s, there's a chance they could have joined a commune or mistakenly joined a cult and lived off the grid somewhere. Maybe they did make it to the festival, met someone or a group of people who promised them the freedom they desired and took them to a commune. But if they did run away and were alive after all these years, why did they never make contact with their families? Maybe if they joined a cult, they couldn't get away and were forced to leave their life behind entirely, or maybe they felt too much time had passed and their family would never forgive them." Details that suggested they did not run off. Mitch was super excited to take his driver's license test in the coming weeks. And Mitch said to his best friend Larry as he left for the festival, quote, "I'll see you Monday." Theory number 2, and I think this is really the only other one, they were victims of foul play.
Right. That's what I think happened.
Yeah, directly from that same site. If they were murdered, where, when, and by whom? Possibilities. Number 1. Was it the person who they hitched a ride with the rest of the way to the festival? It's unknown if they ever hitched a ride the rest of the way or how many people they hitched a ride from. 75 miles is a long stretch. Maybe they were dropped off several times along the route. It's impossible to know who along that route and who out of the possible many rides they hitched with could have harmed them. Perhaps they couldn't hitch a ride and kept walking, and come nightfall were attacked along the route or were kidnapped and murdered elsewhere. Number 2, they made it to the festival and they were murdered. There were 600,000 people in attendance. It could have been anyone at the festival. Within those 600,000 people, statistically, there were bound to be predators there.
Yeah.
Number 3, they made it to the festival and were kidnapped and murdered at a later time. This leaves an endless field of options for where they could have been buried. People from several neighboring states and even farther away traveled to upstate New York for this concert, and it could have been anyone. Number 4, going off of one of my they ran away theories, perhaps they met someone or a group of people who promised them freedom and the teens trusted them and were led to their deaths instead. Number 5, maybe they ran away and one of them was killed or died accidentally and the other one could not face coming back to their family after that, feeling guilt and that they would be blamed. Number 6.
Could explain why Bonnie tried calling his family.
Yep. Number 6, in 2000, 27 years after Mitch and Bonnie's disappearance, a supposed witness came forward to state that he had seen the teens drown in a river. I have a serious problem with this testimony. Let me give you the absurd details first. Alan Smith, a Navy veteran, came forward saying in 2000 that he was on the same Volkswagen bus as the teens. He didn't know their names, but later on connected who they were based on the clothes they were wearing when he heard a description of the missing pair. Allegedly, the bus stopped at a nearby river so everyone could dip in and cool off. Bonnie started to drown. Mitch jumped in after her, and they were both swept downriver while still alive. The bus driver said that he would call the police at a nearby gas station, but the police claim they have no record of a call coming in. Smith's story could never be fully investigated as he could not tell authorities what river they stopped at, who the bus driver was, or if any of the story is even true. Why did it take him nearly 3 decades to come forward with this story?
Maybe he thought he would be held accountable.
Yeah. Why didn't an athletic Navy veteran jump in the river to save the 2 teens? But like you said,
he
if
was
they're
higher
getting
than a hippie and a hang
away,
glider, too.
they were getting swept away. When police took him back to the area, how come he could not identify anything or where the river was? As a trained
30 years ago.
As a trained Navy veteran, he should have a set of skills.
Particular set of skills.
A particular set of skills.
He was also really high. I don't know.
Yeah.
I actually find that story somewhat plausible.
Do you?
Yeah, I do.
So why didn't the bus driver actually call the police station? Why wasn't the call
Didn't
logged?
want to be held accountable.
Why didn't the police send for a search and rescue unit? But as you can see, the police weren't exactly Johnny on the spot with this case, And how did 2 bodies that drowned never resurface further along the river? It seems unlikely, but I don't really know enough.
That's the one thing I question.
Yeah.
Because the rest of it, I could see them just not wanting to get in trouble.
Yeah. And this person writes, I believe Alan Smith is either lying about this for some unknown mentally unstable reason, or he had something to do with their disappearance, murder, and wants to insert himself in the investigation. Like the psychic.
Mm-hmm.
Like the psychic stuff is weird. According to Crime in the City, according to Mitch's best friend, quote, Mitch was a very ethical kid, almost honest to a fault. I don't believe that they ran away or did anything like that. I always figured foul play was involved. That's what I got. So that is the story.
I think it's a foul play situation, too.
It is.
I don't see any real motive for them running away.
No. And I don't think, like they said, like when she was 18 and technically an adult and could do whatever she wanted, I think she would have came back home.
Yeah.
And she was so distraught about her father's degenerative condition that I can't see her not going to his funeral or anything like that. So I think they were killed, but the question is where and when. Like
the hitchhiking thing is what jumps out to me, just because plenty of people have met their demise.
But did they make it to the festival? Like they said 600,000 people were there and they put it out for them to go through their photos. And this was way before, like if this was when cell phones were around, there would be millions of pictures that people were snapping. But this was in the days of old cameras.
Right.
But people did have pictures, and it just sucks wondering if in somebody's photograph somewhere you can see the 2 of them in the background, because you don't know if they made it to the festival. You don't know if they survived through the festival and it happened after, but it just sucks not having any idea. And that's the story of Mitch and Bonnie.
No
like
closure.
I said, this one kind of got to me. This was like a really sad one, and I didn't realize that it was like the oldest open case on missing teenagers.
No.
So I just wonder what happened. I wonder, was the psychic legit? Was he part of what happened to them?
Right.
Like when you get a weird vibe from a psychic and he's describing it almost like he's the one killing them.
That's creepy.
That's creepy. And he was weird that he wanted to work with the police, then all of a sudden he didn't want to. So I don't know. I mean, I don't think they ran away. I'm like 99.9% sure they didn't run away, that they were killed. It's just nobody knows
when or where.
Yeah. But it just amazes me that even as recent as 2020, leads were coming in. So I hope that's
false leads.
Yeah. I hope that something is found and that there's some sort of closure to this. But I just think they're buried somewhere in some woods.
Right.
But it just sucks because it's a really sad case.
You just feel so bad for the family.
You feel bad, and you feel bad for them, wondering what their last moments were like, not knowing what happened. But like I said, this one just got to me. So that is the missing persons case of Bonnie Bickwit and Mitch Weiser. I know our side sessions are usually more fun.
Yeah, this wasn't very fun.
But like I said, this one just kind of got to me. So I hope something comes out of this. So there you go. Next side session will be cheerier.
Okay.
Like I said, I started doing broadcast intrusions, and when I read this article, I'm like, I just really want to do this to get this out there. But I love that. I do love that Rolling Stone had an article about it, so maybe there'll be some new leads coming in. But there you go. The sad case of Mitch and Bonnie. And that picture just gets to me because it's a really cute picture.
That's so sweet.
Yep. So there you go. Another side session's done.
In the books.
Thank you guys so much for subscribing.
Yeah.
Sorry, this one wasn't a real fun one, but I just hate it. I hate unanswered stuff. I can't imagine what that's like. I just literally cannot imagine. Like if Corey
going
would
your
disappear.
whole life,
not
not knowing.
Whole life, not knowing what happened to someone. So there you go. We'll be back with another episode next time. I'll probably finish the broadcast intrusions one.
Yeah.
How do you know about the Max Headroom one?
You've mentioned it.
Have I?
Yeah.
It's just so weird.
Because I don't remember that.
No, it's not that well known, but there's videos of it, and it's just so weird. But that'll probably be our next side session. Cool. So until next time, from Krista and I down in the side cellar, just a little bit off from the strange cellar. Until next time, stay strange.